Hi, my name is Abid Rahman, and this is my evaluation of the question: has the implementation of realistic physics in video games actually improved player immersion? That's the inquiry question for my project, which I started partly due to my love for playing games, having grown up with them, and also in part because of how it bridges the subjects that I study: computer science, maths, and physics. I originally considered 3 games: Half-Life 2, Kerbal Space Program, and Tears of the Kingdom. 2 didn't make it past the early research stage. Kerbal Space Program, notably, would have been a strong starting point for orbital physics, but time constraints meant I couldn't gather enough primary evidence to support the analysis that I needed. Half-Life 2 was already extensively covered by existing games criticism, and with no realistic route to primary interviews for a title nearly 2 decades old, there was little room for original contribution. That left Tears of the Kingdom alongside a shift toward a more narrative-driven game, thelastofus Part 2. 2 titles that take almost opposite approaches to physics, which is exactly what made them worth comparing and more appealing to me. My research combined primary and secondary sources. I spoke with the games industry professionals, ran a survey, and did informal player interviews to see how physical systems actually affected people. Alongside that, I drew on developer commentary, using GDC talks, published interviews, and documentary material, evaluating all of them, all 47 sources against the CRAP framework, so currency, relevancy, authority, accuracy, and purpose. Much of it connects directly to Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's flow theory and Charlene Genet's emergent model. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom runs on Havoc, a legacy physics engine originating in 1998, plus an in-house physics library that Nintendo built specifically for this game. Elements like the chain gates in the Spirit Temple and the recallability, one of 5 abilities available to Link, the player character, still ran on preset animations rather than real physics, which was jarring next to the fully physics-driven Ultra Hand, another one of Link's abilities. The dev team called it Chaos Every Day, which was taken from the Game Developer Conference talk in 2024, a year after the game released. So what did they do? They didn't shy away from adapting physics fully. They doubled down, adding physics-driven motor and shaft rigs, as well as employing the use of buoyancy mechanics to add water resistance. Months of extra production pain, so what happens in the game follows real physical rules, and isn't something faked to look convincing. That's basically Genet's distinction between immersion from visual fidelity and immersion derived from player agency. It's happening in front of Link, not animated to look like it's happening. And it fits the flow theory as well. You stay engaged when there's a real balance between agency and challenge, which every shrine tests. The Last of Us Part 2 goes the opposite way, favouring narrative tension and tight, linear spaces, pushing the player to be more deliberate in their playstyle, since the whole game is more grounded. Realism serves a story here, and not experimentation. The rope mechanics are the clearest example of this. There are no waypoints, no yellow paint, no objectives, no intrusive UI elements, just hooks and pitons that you can read intuitively. Naughty Dog's documentary describes playtesters looking at a beam and thinking, I wonder if I can hook it over that. But nobody told them to, they just did. That's Genet's immersion model from a different angle. Immersion arises when an interaction follows up on your preconceived idea of how it will play out, otherwise just matching real life logic. So working it out yourself feels like your own idea. And it's the same flow principle being applied. You fail a puzzle because you misjudged something, not because the game's being unfair to you. In hindsight, the evaluation has been the most useful part of this entire project. I think physics has genuinely helped immersion in both of these games, but how much depends on how well it's integrated with everything else, not on realism by itself. Not everyone's chasing the same thing either. Some players want hyper-realistic physics and photorealism, whereas others just want whatever helps them win, in a first-person shooter for example. The contrast between Tears of the Kingdom and The Last of Us Part 2 has been very useful for exploring that. Going to developers for technical claims, like Nintendo's GDC talk and Naughty Dog's documentary, instead of just asking players what they thought, made the evidence a lot stronger, because developers could provide rationales for their design philosophies. And where I'd be honest about my limitations are, my primary research wasn't specifically tailored to the case studies. One interviewee had 110 hours in Tears of the Kingdom, but barely touched the Ultra Hand as a feature. So they provided useful findings, but I couldn't generalize everything off of them as just one person. Immersion itself is hard to define objectively, since it's more about individual experience than anything directly measurable. Skills wise, everything that I had to learn for this EPQ has been amplified tenfold since the beginning. I created a skills Gantt chart at the start of the project with additional periodic audits in which I scored myself across 11 skills. A big leap in mastery you can see was in my problem solving. One such instance was a faulty mic dongle that meant an entire interview recording came through with no usable audio, and I had to salvage it by converting the file format and transcribing what I could make out by ear. If I were to do this again, this whole project I would set additional tasks for survey respondents to complete to represent the different genres to help address skew, for example aim-based activities to target shooter-oriented players. The survey was biased across the approximately 200 responses I received because they were collected from subreddits and Discord servers where people were already interested in game. If these two games, The Last of Us Part 2 and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, prove anything, it's that realism only makes immersion stronger as part of the whole design and not bolted on. Immersion to me was never really about the physics engine anyway. It's a player facing perspective. It's the moment you lose 3 hours without noticing. It's when you embody the character that you're playing as, suspending disbelief in order to do so. All in all, I hope you enjoyed hearing about my process, and thank you so much for listening.